certainly there can be many reasons for that, and I'll just look at a couple. One of them, of course, I believe, was and is the ascendancy of the assimilationist, the integrationist. Those leaders who came and tried to project an unreal hope that we could advance the interests of our people by identifying with the destinies of our enemies. A people who try to get us to forget our color and to forget our African heritage. A suppression of those of us who try to maintain our African identity and our African destiny. When you couple that kind of leadership with a few concessions by the establishment, with a type of prosperity, economic prosperity, that made an appearance in the 50s and maintained itself through the 60s, you had a combination then that worked against the interests of the nationalist organizations and the nationalist ideology. We saw a national and neo-colonialist leadership that fell for the delusions of the so-called establishment in the system, and has misled the people into thinking then that their ultimate salvation is that of identifying and becoming one with their oppressors. The thing I have to deal with daily in my classrooms is the amount of lying that must take place in the name of education. The amount of outright deception that goes by the name of education. How truth must be nailed to the cross in classroom after classroom. How people tremble and quake and suffer from anxiety when truth and reality is brought up by their teachers. How people are pushed out of the universities and punished because they dare talk about truth. How people think that they should go to school only to be made comfortable. I have to warn my students time and time again that when you enter my classes, you are not going to be comfortable. I'm here to raise your level of anxiety and your level of fear. I am here to make you suffer. Because if you're in any class, particularly a social science class, and you're comfortable, chances are you're being lied to. Because it is in these classes that you must attain a confrontation with yourself and with reality. And you must attain a confrontation with the lying world that has created you in terms of who and what you are now. You must confront the nature of this beast called education, of which you are a part, and how it is going to transform you into a beast. And how you then must be conscious, become conscious of what it is doing to you and against you, so that you may escape its destiny that it has planned for you. And each day then I sit in the class, mixed, Asians, whites, and blacks, Hispanics, and sometimes it's an exercise in twisting and turning and and squirming, because I dare talk about slavery, because I dare talk about colonialism, because I dare talk about the sickness of Europeans, because I dare talk about the lying, deceptive, and devilish nature and the pathology of the people who now rule this world. And because I dare talk about the irony of where two white men sit down and determine the destiny of a world that's over 90% colored. And where I dare tell them that they sit in these classes and they let these whites and their education brainwash them and propagandize them into servitude, and how their education is an education into ignorance. But if we are to rescue our children and our students and our people, then these unpleasant issues must be dealt with forthrightly. When we deal with then an assimilationist leadership that sees the solution to our problem as getting our children more soundly educated in these lies, then you are going to see a decline and destruction of African people, who thinks that their salvation is one of being educated by the very people who've destroyed them in the first place. You have a paradox there. Why is it that the arbiter of truth, the validator of truth, are the very people who lied to us most? You know, often I have to remind my students and my audiences that if I say something, you have a hard time believing it, and the strange white man comes in saying you believe it right away. You have to be conditioned to accept accept truth and see truth as coming out the mouth of these liars. But that is a part of the thing that I will be talking about here in my next series of lectures. How is it that you make a people backwards, such that the first people they believe are the people who've lied to them most? That the first validators of truth are the people who have manipulated their very lives through lies and deception. I've indicated time and time again how you cannot have this 10% of the world's population ruling over the other 90% unless that 10% keeps the 90% out of its mind. It can only achieve its dominance over the other 90% through deception. The very essence of the identity of Satan, the devil, is that he is a deceiver. The very source of his power, the very foundation of his bringing mankind down and destroying of mankind was through the lie and through deception. And we must recognize then that the white man's rule depends upon ongoing deception and lies. And ultimately then we cannot see him as the foundation and the basis of truth. And ultimately then we cannot let him be the educator of our children. And ultimately we cannot let the reality that he projects become our reality. For he is sick of mind and sick of heart. He is deceived by his own lies. And therefore the reality he projects must be a lying reality. He suffers and he is deadly. How can we not suffer and die if we accept what he sees as real and unreal? And those leaders then who seek to tell us that we can only rescue ourselves through accepting the identity of the white man and to accepting the so-called reality of the white man are leaders who will lead us only to our peril and to our death. And we must recognize that if we were to live, we have to remove these kinds of leaders. And one of the reasons for the condition that we are in today then is that of a leadership that has not yet decided that it will determine a new reality and develop an Afrocentric reality, one that is suitable to the advancement and the development of black people. We have a leadership that has thrown away and rejected self-knowing to a knowing of the enemy. We have people who have a pride in the fact that they know more about the enemy, about the history of their enemies, than they know about themselves, who have a pride in getting degrees in the history of their enemies and knowing nothing about who and what they are as a people. We have a leadership then that made us think that knowledge of self was not important, that knowledge only of our oppressors was the only important knowledge, and that knowledge of who and what he was and about is the only knowledge of importance. And therefore, the more knowledge and the more education these leaders gained in the Eurocentric sense, and the more knowledge and education they gained in terms of the knowledge of the oppressor, the more ignorant they became of themselves. And a people who are ignorant of themselves are a people too who are headed for disaster.